Singapore. Speaking to a young adult in a local startup recently, former head of civil service Lim Siong Guan asked what was the biggest problem the person faced. The answer was unexpected: my mother. The mother could not understand why her child, who had done well in school, did not opt for a stable, well-paying job, and chose instead to join a startup, Mr. Lim recounted. Mothers in Israel would think that way too, 20 years ago, he said. On a recent trip to Israel, he asked what mothers wanted these days. He was told they wanted their kids to be chief executive officers of Start UPS. Mr. Lim told this anecdote and others during a lecture on Tuesday night, November 14, to stress the need for Singapore to build a culture of innovation, excellence and outwardness if the tiny city-state is to avoid mediocrity. It was his third and last lecture as the Institute of Policy Studies' S.R. Nathan Fellow for the Study of Singapore. He warned that as Singapore is both a city and a state, it should not be contented with 1 to 3% growth. This may be the norm for large developed economies, but the cities Singapore competes with grow faster: Jakarta at 10%, Ho Chi Minh City at 8% and Kuala Lumpur at 6%. Singapore. In an age of diminishing trust in governments, Singapore may have to move from a politics of conviction to a politics of involvement, said the former head of the civil service Lim Siong Guan on Tuesday night, November 14. Mr. Lim was speaking after his IPS Nathan lecture, when he was asked if innovation should be initiated by the government or the people. In his answer, he touched on the evolution of politics here. He noted that the People's Action Party government has avoided a politics of expedience. They don't do stuff simply because it's popular, but are prepared to do stuff which is very important for Singapore's survival and the success for the generations to come, he said. This path, the politics of conviction, requires explaining to the people why the more difficult path is necessary, he noted. But this form of politics may have been overtaken by the lower trust people have in governments generally, he said. The level of intrinsic trust has been somewhat diminished, not necessarily because of what the government in Singapore itself has done, but I think this change is all over the world, where the population has a diminished trust in government. It is not a case of no trust. It is a case of, we'd like very much to be able to trust, but the government cannot simply say, this is my explanation, he added. This new era calls for a politics of involvement, he said, adding, we need to involve people in the process because people want to feel that they are shaping the future, or at least they've got a major part in influencing the future. This is a lot tougher, he said. Higher growth rates would give Singapore more options in dealing with its social challenges, like a super-aging population, he said. But to grow at such rates requires productivity increases which, in turn, require a different culture, one that celebrates trying one's best and trying new things, he added. If we want people to be innovative,